Welcome in to the Corner 3, taking you around the arc of college basketball. From the NAAC to the Pac-12, the WCC to the SWAC. We cover it all now on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Austin Oerman.
That's right. Welcome in another edition here of the Corner 3 show/podcast, however it is that you're listening to the Corner 3. Truly, honestly, entirely appreciated. I am your host, Austin Oerman. Thanks for being along for the ride. You want to interact with the show? If you're listening to this live, let me know, 402-464-5685. If you're listening via the podcast, the best way to follow up with comments or questions is on Twitter at Austin_Oerman. I'll make sure the link to this gets posted, gets tweeted out. Drop me a line there with any comments, questions, or concerns that you might have. Should be a fun show, should be a quick, informative show for you. If you're listening to this live, this is airing between games of the high school state baseball tournament. So it's me and Nick Sainert on the call for that. Nick and I will be back hopefully Monday night. We can still pop on the air, give you some baseball corner, little recap of what we've seen so far at the high school state baseball tournament. But for now, we are just a few games into it on the Class A side. But that's another story for another time. If you're on the podcast, you probably don't care too much about that. You're here for the college hoops. I appreciate that about you. Thanks for finding the podcast. What are we talking about tonight? Number one, some interesting stay or go decisions for the NBA draft. We have a couple guys that we know are staying in college, a few guys that we know are going pro, and then a lot of guys with some really important decisions to make, kind of holding the balance of their rosters in college and their coaches' fates to some degree in their hands. At this point, it's very late to pivot. It's not like college football where there might be another wave of transfer portal entries potentially. It's kind of, you have what you have right now in the ranks of college basketball. So a lot of these players, what they decide might help determine how the next season goes, for better or for worse, for their coaches and their teams. After we talk about those stay or go decisions, we'll do a little bit of a follow-up on the episode I did not long ago about international prospects coming over to college basketball. There was something that FIBA, big FIBA, put out about young players in Europe or anywhere overseas, but primarily Europe for the purposes of this discussion, coming over to America to play college basketball instead of sticking with the club that they were with, the club that was developing them. So we will get into what FIBA said, my thoughts, and some other experts' opinions on that. And then Bryce Williams at the NBA Combine right now. Rough first scrimmage for Bryce. Is he on the right team to maximize not just who he is as a player, but really at the NBA Draft Combine for Bryce Williams? Is he on the right team to maximize who he can be, who he should be, who he will be in the NBA? Again, 402-464-5685 with any comments, questions, or concerns. Let's dive right into the NBA Draft. I am recording this on Thursday. So as of today, Thursday, we are 1 month away from the NBA Draft decision deadline. Prospects must make a decision by June 15th at 4 o'clock Central Time on whether they are returning to college or keeping their name in the NBA Draft. Obviously, the Combine will run through Sunday. We already had the NBA Draft Lottery, but then June 15th is that key day to keep in mind. You can go through the Combine, you can get feedback from teams, talk to your agent, talk to teams, whatever you need to do. But by June 15th, you got to have a decision, and that is 10 days before the first round of the NBA Draft. It is just a 2-round draft, but they do stretch it into a couple of days on the 25th and the 26th. So let's dive into the guys that we know are coming back to college. One of them, the more recent news, is Boogie Fland, who was a Kentucky recruit, followed Coach John Calipari from Kentucky to Arkansas, and then tested the NBA Draft waters. Had some good workouts. It went pretty well for him, but he wasn't getting the feedback that he wanted, not a first-round guy. So Boogie Fland says, you know what, I'm going back to college, but not necessarily to Arkansas. Boogie Fland has entered the transfer portal. He's certainly going to be a name to track, one of the best available transfers by really any site right now. I mean, Boogie Fland, a smaller guard, Really good on-ball creator. That's his primary role. The shot absolutely needs to come around, as it does with a bunch of guys who are in college. But it's going to be really interesting to see who targets Boogie Fland, where it is that he ends up landing. Then Isaiah Evans. That's a guy who got some fringy buzz at times during the year. He came off the bench for Duke, never carved out a really consistent role. His welcome to the party moment, his breakout game was against Auburn when he went off for 18 points on 6 threes in the first half, really helping keep Duke afloat in that game. And that was a top 5 matchup in Cameron Indoor Stadium. Duke ultimately prevails thanks to the one they call Slim. Isaiah Evans, that was really his role off the bench, was to be that wing scorer, come in with energy, knock down threes, timely defensive plays here and there. His role grew throughout the year, but he certainly wasn't a feature option, a feature piece for Duke at any point. But because of his height, his length, he's 6'6", 6'8", somewhere in that range. Super skinny, but this is a tall, relatively athletic, competitive dude who shoots the cover off the ball, who catches fire at the drop of the match. Like, it is so quick for Isaiah Evans to heat up and get going. And, he faced a really interesting decision. He didn't get the same number of reps or shots that, say, a DJ Stewart or a Cassius Stanley did at Duke. Both those guys started. Isaiah Evans came off the bench, but teams see, 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", can shoot it, can handle it a little bit, competitive, and they like that. Isaiah Evans' skill set was certainly tantalizing for the NBA, but he says, you know what? I'm going to run it back in Durham. I'm going to take on a bigger role. I want to improve my draft stock for next year, and I do think that if you ask me right now, Isaiah Evans probably leads Duke in scoring. Yeah, you'll have the Boozer twins there and another guy potentially that we'll get to for guys that haven't made up their mind quite yet. But I do think that Isaiah Evans is in that Brandon Ingram sort of mold. Brandon Ingram 2.0, no, I don't think I'll necessarily go that far with him. But Isaiah Evans is going to torch a few teams for 20 points. It would not shock me to see Isaiah Evans put up a couple 30-point performances next year for the Duke Blue Devils as long as he is able to stay healthy. The guys we know that are going pro, one that I think was really a no-doubter is Carter Bryant. Super low usage guy for Arizona, but he's a pretty prototypical 3-and-D wing. On the younger side of things, wasn't asked to do too much at Arizona, but he played pretty perfectly the role that he will likely have in the NBA. Not a guy that's going to be asked to create a lot of shots, but he's a bigger body, athletic enough to get by, dude who you can park in the corners, who can shoot it off a movement, whatever you ask him to do, he's going to be there to do it. Tommy Lloyd is a really good coach who knew what Carter Bryant's role was going to be and said, you know what, we're going to use you in that way. He wasn't ever the feature option for Arizona, but certainly a key part of their success as they make the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. A name that Nebraska fans missed out on, didn't get to see. Thomas Sorber from Georgetown, right? We know Nebraska saw Georgetown out in Las Vegas at the College Basketball Crown, but Thomas Sorber was injured. He has been back. He's going through the NBA draft combine. Seems like things are going really well for him, well enough that he makes the decision to turn pro. This is a dude who, as a freshman, put up some major numbers in the Big East. Tall guy, lanky guy, but sturdy enough even as a freshman to, I think, be prepared, be in a good spot when he reaches the NBA in terms of his body. So good for Thomas Sorber going pro. Drake Powell from North Carolina. You heard the Thompson twins comparison thrown out for him, his athleticism, highest vertical jump of the combine. No one has had any doubts about what he's able to do athletically. He's that wing stopper at 6'5" that so many NBA teams are looking for. And he made some really interesting comments about why he stayed in the NBA draft, or at least part of his rationale. Drake Powell said he didn't feel fully actualized, fully utilized at North Carolina. Now, I like to hear that as a Duke fan, right? I got my Let's Go Duke shirt on. If you're watching on stream, you see that. If not, yeah, I'm wearing my Let's Go Duke shirt. So no, hearing that Hubert Davis may or may not have underutilized or misused a prospect doesn't break my heart at all. But Drake Powell is certainly raw, right? Drake Powell didn't show as much on the offensive end as, say, an Ian Jackson did, who committed to St. John's without really testing the NBA draft waters. I'm not going to say that the Drake Powell, can't create offense. He wasn't asked to do it at North Carolina, but I don't think Drake Powell has an NBA level jumper or handle quite yet. So for him, he's got to lean into that defensive identity, be that stopper. Can he be Nas Little 2.0? Nas Little's a little bit bigger than Drake Powell, a little stockier certainly, but Drake Powell's probably more athletic than Nas Little was. So good for Drake Powell. Hope he gets what he's looking for by going pro. And then another one that I'm a little surprised by is LeBaron Philon. He was one of the guards for Alabama, played at a breakneck pace, shot it pretty well as a freshman, not huge. He was one of the guys that took some weight off of Mark Sears' shoulders at times. Philon can really fill it up. He's a scorer, but he's slight. He's smaller, and that's not something NBA teams necessarily love. I've heard there's a pretty wide range on him from middle of the first round to middle of the second round, so he's got a darn good shot to get drafted, but will it be with a first-round guarantee? I highly doubt it, and that's where I maybe throw LeBaron Philon into the camp of Cassius Stanley or DJ Stewart, like I brought up before, guys that had a pretty good first year, but chose to spend their time developing with an NBA team instead of in college. Hasn't necessarily worked out for Cash Stanley or DJ Stewart on the Duke side of things. LeBaron Philon hoping to break a little bit of that trend of a smaller, undersized, bucket-getting guard. That was his job, right? If he can make it work at the NBA level, some team has talked themselves into him. Good for LeBaron Philon, and hope it goes the way he wants to. All right, now the interesting part. The guys who are TBD. This is in no particular order necessarily, but a bunch of interesting names when we think about college hoops. Who could stay, who could go? The first one that I have on my list to talk about, Yaxel Lendeberg. If you haven't heard this name yet, you are not listening to the show. Yaxel is a stud. Yaxel is fun. He came from UAB. He played there for a couple of years, two-time All-American Conference player, two-time All-Tourney team, two-time All-American Conference Defensive Player of the Year, and last year's American Conference Tournament MVP. He averaged 17.7 points, 11.5 rebounds, and 4 assists per game for the Blazers last year, shooting 52% overall, 36% from three, and 76% at the free throw line. Put up a player efficiency rating of 30, which is really good for those of you who might not know. He's played in 72 games with 68 starts the last 2 years for the Blazers, listed as a junior and a senior, but does have an additional year of eligibility. Led the conference in rebounding both years, blocked about 2 shots per game both years. Yaxel Lendeberg at 6'9", 230 is the do-it-all type of forward that Dusty May and Michigan tabbed to replace Danny Wolf. Michigan has had, we talked about them a little bit in the transfer portal. Vlad Golden leaves. Danny Wolf declares for the NBA draft. What do? They bring in Marez Johnson Jr. from Illinois. And as of now, Yaxel Lendeberg from UAB, but he's gotten some really solid feedback. For Lendeberg, he's a bit of a tweener, right? That's a guy who I think will be a better college player next year than he would be an NBA player in 2 or 3 years. But you look at a guy that's 6'9", 230, can handle, can shoot it adequately, will certainly crash the glass and rebound. Little bit of positional flexibility, right? I think he's an undersized 5, but in the open spread out NBA, maybe he can hack it in some matchups, but certainly a guy that's comfortable at the power forward position. That's a guy that's going to be a really interesting name to monitor, because he said going into the draft process, he was 60-40, leaning toward a return to college, which would mean he would end up at Michigan. Now he says with the good feedback he's getting from the NBA, it's a true 50-50 decision for him. So he's going to be a guy that I wouldn't be surprised to see let this process play out. I'm not even willing to make a prediction on what I think happens. It'd be really fun to see him back in the college ranks, but certainly Yaxel Lendeberg's stock is rising at the NBA draft combine. Another guy like that, Cedric Coward. This is a guy who, selfishly, I would love to see come back to college basketball. 6'6", 190, shooting guard, forward type, began his career at Eastern Washington, and then played last year at Washington State. Only played 6 games due to injury, but he averaged 17.7 points, 7 boards, 3.7 assists per game. Shot at 56, 40, and 84 were his shooting splits. But the thing with Cedric Coward is he's a guy that is really, really elevated his stock tremendously. A lot of places have him in that mid to low 30s range in terms of the NBA draft, which means he's a fringe first round prospect. But this is a dude at 6'6" with a wingspan over 7 feet long. He is the prototypical sort of 3-and-D wing that the NBA is looking for. He's a little shorter and skinnier than Carter Bryant, who we mentioned from Arizona earlier. But I would give Coward the edge on athleticism. His decision is interesting because Duke was very quiet in the transfer portal until they landed a commitment from Cedric Coward. It wasn't a hard commitment. He said, if I go to college, I will play for Duke, but I'm going to test the NBA draft process. Of course, he's 100% in on the draft and the process right now. He's going to take some time and review his options, but this is a guy whose stock continues to elevate. Probably not a feature option, and someone put out some interesting numbers about how Cedric Coward has had his fair share of struggles against top 100 college teams, which may only get tougher when he goes to the NBA. But if this is a guy that sees, he's going to be a pretty low usage role to begin his career, he can work on his defense, really get on the court that way. He can knock it down from long range. And then if the opportunity presents itself in transition, rise up and jam, he'll take that. I don't know what Cedric Coward's future looks like as an on-ball creator, what his handle is going to look like in a few years. But that's a player that, certainly has his options. Starting his career again at Eastern Washington for 2 years, and started the season in a big breakout way for Washington State last year in just those 6 games where he played 33 minutes, but had an unfortunate, I believe it was a knee injury that held him out of competition. Trying to pull up his game logs here if College Basketball Reference would load. The competition that Cedric Coward played his first 6 games last year, he played in a win over Portland State, a win over Bradley, surprisingly solid competitive West Missouri Valley team. Again, Washington State takes them down by 17. A game against Idaho where he wasn't really a huge factor in 27 minutes. Didn't show up huge in a neutral game, against Iowa. The Hawkeyes ended up winning that one by about 10. Coward was just 3 of 10 overall, 1 of 6 from 3. Didn't knock down both his free throws. But despite only scoring those 9 points, he had 8 rebounds and 2 assists, as well as a blocked shot in that game against the Hawkeyes. His 2 better games, he put up 30 points against Northern Colorado and then 22 in a don't you miss me sort of game against Eastern Washington, also on a neutral court. So for Cedric Coward, what would that mean for him and for Duke? There's a lot going on in that decision. Duke seems to believe Cedric Coward will be staying in the NBA draft and has pivoted to Dame Sarr, an Italian wing, to fill that spot. Coward probably a little bit more polished than Sarr is, a pretty darn clean positional fit with Duke right now, but his decision is leaning toward the NBA draft, though it's not official quite yet. Tahad Pettiford, 6th man extraordinaire as a freshman for Auburn, averaged double-digit points, tore it up from 3. He was really the ultimate X factor in college basketball. When Tahad Pettiford was on, when he was good, Auburn was almost unstoppable. Janai Broome was undoubtedly the best player on that team. Tahad Pettiford challenged him at times, and this was a team that was only about half a year younger on average than the Oklahoma City Thunder's starting 5 that we see the Thunder up 3-2 as of the time of this recording in the NBA Western Conference semifinals. But Tahad Pettiford was that X factor, that spark, that guy that came in, knocked down shots, bursts of energy. Not a great defender, but an opportunistic one, had his fair share of steals as a smaller point of attack sort of guard. Dude's a bucket. He's a stone cold killer with the basketball in his hands. It's another guy that's really been moving up NBA draft boards. A couple guys who are probably holding steady in the NBA in that late first to early second round, Alex Condon and Carter Knox, both from SEC schools. Condon was a big part, his return of Florida winning the national championship, and then Carter Knox at Arkansas, younger brother, of course, of Kevin Knox, lottery pick, who still hasn't really panned out in the NBA. Carter Knox really, put some jet fuel in the tank and took off late in the end of the year, especially in the NCAA tournament. He was a big part of Arkansas's success there. So going to be interesting to see if teams are maybe a little scared off from Carter Knox, given his brother, if they view him differently. Right now, I would lean toward both those guys, Alex Condon and Carter Knox, heading back to college. Alex Condon sort of in that Alex Caravan sort of mold, and Carter Knox because I really think he could be that go-to guy for Arkansas for a full season next year and continue to play his way up. One of the guys who's had a rise that we didn't know he was necessarily going to need was Mackenzie Mbako. So Mackenzie Mbako was at one point committed to Duke. Cooper Flagg reclassified, so Mackenzie Mbako decommits in case Cooper Flagg decided he wanted to go to Duke, which ultimately ended up being the case. Mackenzie Mbako ends up at Indiana, where he wasn't bad, right? One of the better, more consistent outside shooters for them, but was never really in that feature role. It was an accumulate talent, roll the ball out there, see what happens sort of system from Mike Woodson. And Mackenzie Mbako never really found consistent footing in as an on-ball creator. Flashes were there, but Indiana certainly didn't play through him. Now with Mackenzie Mbako, he's put his name in the NBA draft. He's played really solid basketball in the scrimmages at the NBA Combine. That's a guy who, at the time of his recruitment, was thought of as a surefire, top 10, borderline top 5 pick. I mean, 6'8", wing with handle, ability to shoot, capable positional defender. Yeah, sky's the limit for Mackenzie Mbako as a player. If he does not keep his name in the NBA draft, he'll go to Texas A&M and play buckyball. That's going to be one to monitor, because I do think that Mackenzie Mbako in the open floor, fast pace, as a capable shooter, could put up some really, really good numbers in college and boost his NBA draft stock. But is he a guy whose mindset was NBA or bust? He gets his first opportunity. It's going pretty well. He's going to jump at that opportunity. Remains to be seen. Some other names to keep in mind and to monitor here as we move on throughout the NBA draft combine, guys who may stay or may go. Miles Bird, ace defensive stopper. Is he in the Ryan Dunn mold? The guy that was from Virginia, got drafted by the Phoenix Suns. Bird isn't as big as Dunn, if I recall. Outside shot is still coming around, but again, lengthy defensive stopper from San Diego State, who didn't have the same caliber of year that we're used to out of the Aztecs. They weren't bad by any means, but they weren't vintage, right? Another year of Miles Bird, I think, would go a long way for them. Milos Uzan and Otega Oweh, two guys who have the ball in their hands a lot for their respective teams. Uzan, of course, for Houston, helping them to a national runner-up finish. And then Otega Oweh, who was a big part of Mark Pope's first year at Kentucky. You got to play defense for Kelvin Sampson. Milos Uzan certainly took a step there, but when he elevated his offense, when he got more assertive consistently, Houston's offense really took off. We think about defense, rock fight, grind it out for Houston. Their offense was efficient, though, right? Not going to put up the gaudy numbers as consistently as like Florida did necessarily. But Milos Uzan was the key to unlocking a lot of Houston's efficiency. His ability to get into the lane, to drive and kick, to finish, to hit open spot up threes when other guys like Juwan Roberts were cooking. That went a long way for Houston. Then Otega Oweh really embodied the spirit of a lot of what Kentucky wanted to do, right? You think about maybe a Jackson Robinson first, right, as that wing that's handling the ball and shooting. Kentucky did a pretty darn good job of spreading the floor in year one under Mark Pope, but he needed that bulldog. He needed that guy that in those tough moments could put a team on his back, finish games strong. Otega Oweh certainly did that twice against Oklahoma, breaking the hearts of his former program with a couple of game winners. Bulldog defensively, not an elite defender, but Otega Oweh is absolutely rocked up. He will hold his own just fine defensively at the NBA level, I believe. Some more wild cards. PJ Haggerty. Big market for him in the transfer portal. Doesn't seem like it's necessarily heating up in the NBA. This dude is another guy that's a bucket. Does he have his head screwed on straight? Is he willing to buy into the little things that it's going to take to be a successful NBA player? You would think having a head coach like Penny Hardaway would help him with that, but we're still TBD on PJ Haggerty, who I believe was an All-American. I don't remember if it was first or second team, but he put up some incredible numbers for the Tigers this year. Darion Williams from Texas Tech, a really important piece of their run to the Elite Eight, had a chance to make it through to the Final Four, but then Walter Clayton Jr. happened to the Red Raiders. Darion Williams, another guy kind of in that Yaxel Lendeborg mode, not quite as well-rounded. You give Lendeborg the edge on defense, maybe with rebounding, but Williams is, again, a post bucket who can stretch the floor, still developing outside game for him, but he's at least a credible threat from outside. Will he play that role in the NBA? Probably not. So is that a guy that can throttle his role down, get better at the little things, and buy in for his first few years, probably as the 7th or 8th guy in that rotation? I don't think Darion Williams is ready to step into the NBA from day one and be a feature option. But maybe with another year in college, if he keeps developing that outside game and that handle, maybe he sure could be. RJ Luis, not exactly an efficient guy, one that St. John's benched down the stretch of its loss in the NCAA tournament, but the Big East Player of the Year at 6'5", a lot put on his shoulders by Rick Pitino. Certainly worth a flyer there. I would think, I would guess that RJ Luis keeps his name in the NBA draft, but that's just a gut feeling, not based on any real strong evidence. Then a couple of the athletic guys are Yannick Conan-Niederhauser and Adu Thiero. Conan Niederhauser was one that Nebraska saw at Penn State. Think of, he's a springy 7'1", athletic rim protecting center. Again, not a lot of stretch potential. So there's the same debate kind of in the NBA with centers, especially non-shooting centers like we just got done having with running backs in the NFL. If I'm Niederhauser, I come back to college, I develop into a more well-rounded player, and I think that's going to help down the line. The iron's warm for him. I wouldn't necessarily say that the iron is hot, even though he's played pretty decently at the NBA Combine. And then Adu Thiero. At Kentucky 2 years ago, defensive stopper, defensive menace, athletic guy, brought a little bit of that with him to Arkansas, but scored at some of the best rates of his career. When he went down, Arkansas was a different team. He was so important to the Hogs' success at some points this year. Again, kind of that prototypical NBA 2 or 3, where he's long, he's athletic, he can lock you up probably 1 through 3 comfortably, maybe throw him on some 4s from time to time. And again, the shot is still coming around for him. It was better at Arkansas. At least I thought it looked better at the very least. Arkansas didn't run the same system as Kentucky did this year, but of course, Thiero was comfortable in it with his second year in the John Calipari system. So Adu Thiero is a guy that I would not be surprised to see go the NBA draft route. But again, that's more of a hunch more so than anything confirmed. He's certainly focused on the NBA draft. He said as much. Him, Darian Williams, RJ Luis, PJ Haggerty, I believe, are the guys who are more focused on the NBA draft. So this is from ESPN. They say 4 of the 5 best players left in the portal: RJ Luis, PJ Haggerty, Darian Williams, and then Jameer Watkins from Florida State, said they would prefer to remain in the NBA draft, but have yet to make a final decision. And Adu Thiero, according to ESPN, is widely expected to keep his name in the NBA draft, but said that the door is not completely shut on a return to college. We'll keep monitoring that. Again, we are just under a month away from the final decision date. June 15th is when we will know for sure who's going to stay in college and who's going to take the jump into the professional basketball ranks. Speaking of making a jump from overseas to stateside, FIBA put out a statement, something they would like their clubs and prospects to consider. How would that impact college basketball? A lot of good stuff from Jonathan Givony of ESPN. We'll dive into that and give you my thoughts on it when we return to the Corner 3. Unearth the secret to long-lasting tires at Tread's Central Tire Pros, a league apart in commitment, service, and expertise. This isn't just about rubber meeting the road, but trust, safety, and surety converging in perfect harmony. This is where expectations are exceeded every time. Make your appointment today at Tread Central Tire Pros, just south of Cortland on Highway 77, or visit our website to explore our services. Remember, when it comes to tires, choose Tread Central Tire Pros because we tread differently.
Hi everyone, Kendall Warnock, A1 Automotive in downtown Lincoln. Spring is here, summer is fast approaching. With weddings, vacations, and weekend getaways on your mind, do not let car issues prevent you from getting where you need to be. Car problems shouldn't be something that you put up with. Let us get you back on the road in comfort and safety. We diagnose all makes and models from Porsches to Hondas, Toyotas, and Chevrolets. We fix a variety of issues with all of them with our talented techs and our experienced staff. A1 Automotive at 11th and L, downtown Lincoln, always honest answers.
Empower a child today with the Teammates Mentoring Program. Hope is only a conversation away when you choose to share your talent, time, and heart with the child. Together, you can build a relationship based on strengths and chart a brighter future, 1 week at a time. Find out how you can be a mentor by visiting LincolnTeammates.org. Become what you needed as a kid by joining the Teammates Mentoring Program today.
Rain, snow, or shine, John Henry's is here to keep your home's plumbing systems working properly no matter what kind of weather Nebraska throws at us. From unclogging toilets and drains to installing new water heaters and water treatment systems, John Henry's is your plumbing expert in the Lincoln and Omaha communities. Visit us at calljh.com or call John Henry's.
435-5555. John Henry's Plumbing, Heating and Air,
and Electrical.
If you want to make new floor shopping easier, come to Oak Street Carpet. Hi, I'm Steve Carper. Our flooring professionals can help you choose the best flooring for you, your family, and your budget. We eliminate the confusion. even better, you'll be enjoying your new flooring much sooner. No 6 or 8 week waits. We'll install right away and save you money on installation. Floor shopping made easy every day at O Street Carpet.
O Street Carpet.
1732 O Street. Family owned and operated. Always the best value.
Back to the Corner 3 on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Austin Oerman.
Jumping right back into the Corner 3 podcast, I am your host, Austin Oerman. Give me a follow on Twitter at Austin_Oerman. You want to be a part of the show? You can, as always, 402-464-5685 if you're listening live, or if you're listening via the podcast. Like I said, follow me on Twitter. Send me a line there at Austin_Oerman. A couple weeks ago, we talked about Balkan Brad Underwoodovich and his unique strategy of relying very heavily on Balkan players in this most recent recruiting cycle. There was a lot of them for Brad Underwood, not against the rules per se, but not something that I'm necessarily a huge fan of. Not in a xenophobic sort of way. It's because these young players, the majority of them, already have professional experience, and so many of them are coming over still with 4 years of NCAA eligibility. And I think that the older the college basketball gets, I understand why coaches would want to continue to move that way. But I think we need something much closer to an age limit, or at least an age bracketing that's a little more enforced. And so if you missed that episode, I'll try to remember to link it in the show notes in the description down below when I post it. If not, just go back to wherever it is you get your podcast, wherever it is you find the Corner 3, Apple, Amazon, Stitcher, whatever, you name it. Should just be the episode from a couple weeks ago. I gave you my fuller thoughts, a little more fleshed out in that episode. So I'm not going to spend time relitigating a lot of that. Certainly some of it will come up in this discussion. But earlier today, at the time of this recording on Thursday, John Givney of ESPN at Draft Express on Twitter posted a statement, a part of a letter from FIBA. Under the Other Matters section for them, FIBA said, following the recommendation of the expert group focused on young players in the NCAA created in December 2024, the Central Board has defined 3 objectives to maintain a sustainable ecosystem, focusing on helping players make well-informed decisions, increase availability of NCAA players for their national team, and to help protect clubs' investments into player development. The decision was made to engage formally with the NCAA with the goal of treating moves from players outside the USA to NCAA colleges in the same way as international transfers between FIBA clubs using a letter of clearance. Okay, so the important part to me, FIBA has 3 objectives to maintain what it is describing as a sustainable ecosystem, focusing on helping players make well-informed decisions and increasing availability of NCAA players for their national team, and to help protect clubs' investments into player development. There's a lot to get into there, and you think about it from the club standpoint, right? You get these young men and young women into your program when they're sometimes late elementary school, sometimes in the middle school, certainly by the time they're in high school, they are in your program. They are in your club. They're often, boarded, like boarding school style with these professional, semi-professional clubs. There's education going on, there's sports going on. And so from the club standpoint, you're investing all this money into these players just to not reap the benefit where it matters most, right? At the upper levels of the youth ranks, or even at the senior club levels in a lot of these leagues, like the Adriatic leagues, the Balkan leagues, even France, Germany, Spain, countries like that. These clubs appear to be getting frustrated with their best young talent hitting the road for college basketball. And they want to do as much as they can to keep their prospects that they put time, money, effort into developing overseas with them, to reap the benefits, to reap the rewards of everything they did to get these young players started in the game of basketball. And that's certainly an understandable position, right? We think about brain drain in other industries, right? You want to keep your local talent. You want to keep your best and brightest home to do the work for you. You don't necessarily love to see them, spread their wings and fly away. Spread their wings and fly, certainly, but you like them flying vertically, where they're still in your airspace, not necessarily, going over borders. And if they do, they come back home. That's got to be the draw for whether it's a club, a business, a state, whatever it is, you should want to keep your best talent at home. And I'm not going to get into my whole Nebraska football recruiting discussion. That's for another time. That's absolutely for another platform. So I absolutely understand what FIBA is going for, why it would want its clubs to benefit from the work that it puts in making sure these young players have opportunities to play basketball and to make sure that they are developed and developing. But Givney tweets out, FIBA comes out publicly saying they plan to engage with the NCAA on international players leaving for college. Implementing a letter of clearance system as suggested would allow European teams to block players from leaving for the U.S. That's the other part of this. The letter of clearance, has to be granted, has to be given by the club. And he goes on to make the point in another tweet. Important to note, players under contract with international teams can't just get up and leave for college without permission. And this is something that I probably should have assumed, but didn't know for sure until reading this from John Givney. We've seen many schools pay buyouts to clubs this offseason and last. Young players often make 10 times or more in college via NIL now after leaving Europe. Yeah, that's pretty hefty. I would not be shocked if Illinois was one of those teams paying some pretty hefty, buyout fees on top of what I'm sure they are paying their young Balkan ballers in terms of NIL. So on the one hand, at least the NCAA is kicking some money back to FIBA. Hey, thanks for your time. Thanks for your trouble. We're not just stealing your prospects. Here's a little bit of cash for your trouble. You did great finding this one. I'm sure you can find the next one. Not a great message, but in an era of competition, when competition helps, thrive, Givney says this as well. European teams should do a better job of making it attractive for younger players to stay home. Hugo Gonzalez left over $1 million on the table from BYU, but he can barely get off the bench some games for Real Madrid. Pretty clear Igor Demine made the right decision to leave. Hugo Gonzalez is an interesting name in the NBA draft. His outside shot hasn't come along, but that's just the thing, right? Hugo Gonzalez passed on guaranteed money, over $1 million apparently from BYU, to stay overseas, to stay in Spain, to play for Real Madrid. And it hasn't necessarily worked out for him right now, right? In the short term, he's not getting the minutes, he's not getting the touches, he's not getting the same level of development as an Igor Demine, who came over to BYU and had some really dominant stretches in Big 12 play. Athletically, shooting the ball, maybe not necessarily there, but he got a first taste and introduction to something maybe a little closer to the NBA than he would have had at the level that Igor Demine was playing at back home. And I think that's a big part of it, right? How do you set up a system that makes your players want to stay home, right? And I think that, to me, is the important distinction and difference to draw, is that what FIBA wants to do, at least it seems like it, or how it would seem in practice, is that FIBA, just wants to make it harder to leave more than anything, right? They want to make it harder on the NCAA to get these guys. They want to have that right of first refusal. They want to hold the futures, the careers in their hands, right? You have to come to us. You have to play by our rules. We'll up the price if you want to leave. But instead of, it's the same thing in result, but in terms of how it's framed, right? I like how Givney talks about it. Instead of wielding the stick of, you have to listen to us, our fate is in your hands, that's a little dramatic, maybe a little harsh sometimes for these young players who just want to go play basketball, test themselves against the best competition of the world. Certainly business and financial interests matter and are at stake here. What I would wish we could all move toward a system and a mindset that says, you know what, we want what's best for the young people. Do enough to sustain the business model, do enough to make it a successful one. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be about the business. It's not going to be about the adults holding the power. It's going to be about the adults helping the young student athletes accomplish whatever it is they want to accomplish. And I don't think we're there yet, really, at any level with any sort of consistency. But it's one thing for these European teams to say, haha, you can't leave unless you get us to sign a letter. And another thing for them to improve conditions, improve access, improve how they communicate with basketball in the United States, because I know we've talked a lot about it during On the Block, how international foreign basketball is catching up to the United States in a lot of ways, right? Basketball, a very American game that certainly has spread, grown, boomed, developed in the last, now 33 years since the Dream Team went to Barcelona and put on the show that it did. But what you see from these foreign prospects still choosing to come stateside and play is, like Jivney said, 10 times the money in some cases is on the table, even if it's double the money, even if it's the same money. The biggest part of this decision, I would hope, for these young student athletes is the ability to test themselves against the best competition in the world, shy of the NBA and shy of a Champions League in basketball or whatever it is. You're going to get a pretty high quality of play in college basketball. And almost more importantly, for these young men and women that have dreams of continuing to play professionally, especially for the young men in the NBA, we know that they're drafting stashes all the time in the second round of the NBA draft. So it's not like teams don't go over to Europe and aren't already there. But it's so much simpler. It's so much more straightforward to be scouted for the NCAA and then for the NBA if you're already stateside. Instead of them having to spend resources, spend time to fly overseas. Like, think about a Leo Curtis. Would Nebraska have had a chance at Leo Curtis? Would Nebraska have been the first in on him in Iceland? Maybe, but probably not. I never heard of Frederick Leo Curtis's name before he decommitted from Arizona State, and then Nebraska reached out to him, right? It's an easier flight to the Atlantic Northeast, where Nebraska ended up finding him, talking to him, and then he visited campus. It's easier to get to Massachusetts and Connecticut and in New York and New Jersey than it is to get to Iceland, at least last I checked, domestically, right? So it makes a lot of sense for why these young men and women would want to come over and play college basketball in the United States. It makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of reasons that they should be allowed to, and it should be encouraged, and it should be celebrated. But you can also understand from FIBA's perspective, and I think for the sake of domestic players in the United States in terms of opportunities for them, you can also understand why maybe FIBA wants a little bit more grip, more control on players that are in its own sort of club system, playing for its national teams, not wanting to do all the developmental work and not see really any of the reward across the world. So it's a nuanced issue. It's a complicated issue. It is a complex issue. It's going to be really interesting to see how it develops moving forward. One final segment, we'll talk some Bryce Williams at the NBA Combine. How did his first scrimmage go? Is he on a team that's maximizing his abilities? What is the draft outlook for Bryce Williams? We'll get to that to wrap up the Corner 3 momentarily. Unearth the secret to long-lasting tires at Tread's Central Tire Pros, a league apart in commitment, service, and expertise. This isn't just about rubber meeting the road, but trust, safety, and surety converging in perfect harmony. This is where expectations are exceeded every time. Make your appointment today at Tread Central Tire Pros, just south of Cortland on Highway 77, or visit our website to explore our services. Remember, when it comes to tires, choose Tread Central Tire Pros because we tread differently.
Hi everyone, Kendall Warnock, A1 Automotive in downtown Lincoln. Spring is here, summer is fast approaching. With weddings, vacations, and weekend getaways on your mind, do not let car issues prevent you from getting where you need to be. Car problems shouldn't be something that you put up with. Let us get you back on the road in comfort and safety. We diagnose all makes and models from Porsches to Hondas, Toyotas, and Chevrolets. We fix a variety of issues with all of them with our talented techs and our experienced staff. A1 Automotive at 11th and L, downtown Lincoln, always honest answers.
Empower a child today with the Teammates Mentoring Program. Hope is only a conversation away when you choose to share your talent, time, and heart with a child. Together, you can build a relationship based on strengths and chart a brighter future, 1 week at a time. Find out how you can be a mentor by visiting LincolnTeammates.org. Become what you needed as a kid by joining the Teammates Mentoring Program today.
Rain, snow, or shine, John Henry's is here to keep your home's plumbing systems working properly no matter what kind of weather Nebraska throws at us. From unclogging toilets and drains to installing new water heaters and water treatment systems, John Henry's is your plumbing expert in the Lincoln and Omaha communities. Visit us at calljh.com or call
John Henry's.
435-5555. John Henry's Plumbing, Heating and Air.
and electrical.
If you want to make new floor shopping easier, come to O Street Carpet. Hi, I'm Steve Carper. Our flooring professionals can help you choose the best flooring for you, your family, and your budget. We eliminate the confusion. Even better, you'll be enjoying your new flooring much sooner. No 6 or 8 week waits. We'll install right away and save you money on installation. Floor shopping made easy every day at O Street Carpet.
O Street Carpet.
1732 O Street. Family owned and operated. Always the best value.
At Parkview Animal Hospital in Lincoln, it's not just their professional care that sets them apart, but their warm staff and state-of-the-art facilities. Whether it's for a routine checkup or a comprehensive medical procedure, at Parkview, your pet isn't just another number, but a valued member of their caring family. Visit them at pahlincoln.com today and in person just south of 14th and Pine Lake Road. Parkview Animal Hospital, your pet, their passion, for happier, healthier, furry friends.
Authentic Mexican food is not always easy to find, but you can find it in Lincoln at Tacos Los Hermanos. Their birria tacos are worth the drive from anywhere in town, but their chicken, chorizo, al pastor, and asada tacos are also worth the trip. You can also try any of those meats in a burrito or quesadilla. You won't find a better toppings bar in the area or better dessert options. If you can't get there, don't worry, they do deliver as well. Stop by Tacos Los Hermanos for lunch or dinner today at 70th and Havelock Streets in Lincoln.
Back to the Corner 3 on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Austin Oerman.
Back for one final segment here on the Corner 3. I am Austin Oerman. Follow me on Twitter there at Austin_Oerman for more insights on college basketball. Plenty on the Huskers, plenty on baseball, some basketball, general basketball and football thoughts as well. As I mentioned, leading into break, Nebraska's Bryce Williams was invited to the NBA Draft Combine, put on not his own team. It is Team Williams, but not named necessarily for Bryce Williams. But it's 4 teams of 8, 9, sometimes 10 players. Excuse me. And Bryce Williams was in the starting lineup for Team Williams in Game 1. Team Williams got off to a 10-point lead after the first quarter, but lost each of the next 3 and ended up losing the game 83-80, which matters, a little bit less than say, a college game or even an NBA G League game. But it was a rough kind of debut for Bryce Williams, at least scoring the ball. In the 40-minute game, he played 18 minutes and 15 seconds. Bryce was a -4 on the game. He didn't make a shot. 0 of 8 from the floor, 0 of 3 from 3, and he did not get to the free throw line and attempt a free throw. He did pull down 7 rebounds, 5 of them on D and 2 of them on offense, and did add an assist. But Bryce Williams was the only player in his first game that didn't score a point. And this is the dude who was one of the Big Ten's, leading scorers last year, silky smooth guy for the last couple years for Nebraska, highest point margin and output in a single game in Nebraska history, the overtime game, multiple overtime game at Ohio State, of course, for Nebraska. So for Bryce Williams to go scoreless, not exactly what he was looking for. But then I had to dig into the box score a little bit more, look at who his teammates were. The guy setting him up, Ryan Nembhard, younger brother, of course, of Andrew Nembhard, who's made a big name for himself the last couple postseasons with the Pacers. Ryan Nembhard played really well. He was a plus 12, 13 points, and 8 assists for him. Sion James, the guy that ran the point for Duke quite a bit this last year, is on Bryce Williams' team. But the guys that really stole the show, Maxime Reynaud from Stanford, 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 assists. And John Givney, there's that name again from ESPN, said that Micah Peavy played pretty well all around as well. With that forward position, 12 points, 8 rebounds, what he said was some pretty tremendous defense. So when you think about the guys in that starting lineup with Bryce Williams, Ryan Nembhard was handling the ball, so Bryce Williams didn't have to. Sion James was listed as a forward, but I wouldn't put him in that conversation. Sion James is a more traditional guard. At least that's how he was used at Duke. And sure, he won't be a primary creator in the NBA, but I think that in this lineup, Bryce Williams is probably more of the 3 than Sion James is. I mean, Bryce Williams got his official measurements listed 6'5" and a quarter, barefoot, 206 pounds. Wingspan ended up nearly 6'11" and an 8'7" and a half standing reach. So pretty darn good measurements for Bryce, whether it's the 2 or maybe a smaller ball sort of 3. But either way, you have 2 guys handling the ball before you in Ryan Nembhard and Sion James. And then even off the bench, You throw in Milos Uzan, who ran a lot of point for Houston this last year. That's 3 ball handlers. So Bryce Williams didn't have that on-ball creation role necessarily. You think about a post-scorer, post-facilitator like Maxime Reynaud. Okay, so there's some more responsibility off Bryce's shoulders. And then Micah Peavy, certainly an offense forward player, but not all offense necessarily. I think this team, at least the starting lineup, was pretty tailor-made for Bryce Williams to step into that 3 and D role that I think he's going to be asked to play in the NBA. More games to come, but it certainly wasn't a great first showing for Bryce Williams. Some other interesting teammates of his off the bench. Tamar Bates, a guy that was that Indiana transferred to Missouri. Tamar Bates also struggled. He was a -9, only went 1 of 6 from the floor. Grant Nelson, the pride of North Dakota, played from North Dakota State and then Alabama. Grant Nelson was just 3 of 9, 0 of 2 from 3. Only pulled down 3 rebounds, was a -14. Milos Uzan was a -23 with just 2 points in his 16 minutes and 57 seconds on the court. So Bryce Williams wasn't atrocious, right? Would have loved to have seen some shots go down for him. I don't know how he got those shots, if they were spot up, if they were off the bounce, if they were self-created, whatever it was. But you look at those plus minus numbers for some other guys, and you look at the role that Bryce Williams is going to be asked to play, which is not a feature option, not a primary guy in the NBA, just a go do your job. Lock up a 2, guard some 3s. If you get switched onto a point, don't get toasted. Attack a closeout, or preferably park it in the corner, park it on the wing, knock down your open shot. Not exactly a rousing success for Bryce Williams, but he wasn't the most negative of anyone on the court, and that's I really think for Bryce going to be the challenge these next few games at the Combine. Strick has talked about this from his experiences in different camps and combines while he was going through the draft process and free agency process. Is what are you doing to stand out? Right now, the only thing that Bryce Williams did to stand out was be the only player in the game, not to score. Wasn't the only one not to make a shot, as Michael Ruzic of Team Mueller, the other team, didn't make a shot either. But Bryce shot 8 times and didn't make a single one, didn't knock down a 3. And now the 3-pointers were dropping at a high rate. Bryce's team was just 9 of 34 from range. The other team was 8 of 29. I'm sure there's some acclimation to rims to get used to there at the NBA Combine. But what is Bryce Williams going to do to stand out, right? It's one thing to be a star in your role. And I want to believe that NBA talent evaluators will notice that and give Bryce Williams credit for saying, hey, this guy didn't try to do too much. He took the advantage of the opportunities that were in front of him, didn't press, didn't try too hard, didn't try to dominate the ball or take over the game. He played in the flow. He played in the rhythm. But then if you have that little responsibility on your shoulders where your job is to play, hard-nosed defense on one of the other team's better scorers, and then have other people do the work for you, and you hit spot-up 3s, man, you better hit your spot-up 3s then, if those are the ones that Bryce was getting. So I hope the next couple games go better for Bryce Williams than this first one did. Bryce certainly not a lock to get drafted. Hope that he's able to do something that it doesn't make him, just fit in with everyone else. Hope Bryce starts standing out in a more positive way, because that's a young man who's put in the work, who I think absolutely deserves to be drafted for the person he is and the work that he's put in. But sometimes it's not about that in the NBA. So Bryce Williams, pick it up. We're rooting for you there. Former Nebraska number 3. That'll do it for this show. Thanks a ton for listening here to the Corner 3 podcast. If you're listening live, keep it right here for some more state baseball. But if you are on the podcast, give it a follow, give it a like, give it a share. Really appreciate you for listening. As always, let me know any comments, questions, or concerns at Austin_Oerman. We'll be back next Friday night at 6 for a little bit more of the same, chatting some college hoops here on 93.7 The Ticket.